to Simpler. We are three pastors, husbands, and fathers on a journey to make life simpler by holding Jesus as the core for every belief and practice. This journey has shaped us to be more like Christ, freed us from the shame of failure, and encouraged us to a deeper love of our Lord and God. We invite you to join us in the discussions that have shaped and continue to shape our lives.
Like it's pissing me off because it's like everything I like about it. I love everything about his program. I don't like his perspective on investing.
Yeah. Well, I think that actually makes you better at teaching it.
Maybe so. You do have to check a box that says I'm not going to be Dave Ramsey-ish when I teach this, but I don't care.
Yeah. You're not going to what?
They say you check a box, an agreement box, when you teach it that I'm not going to be Dave Ramsey-ish.
What does that mean?
Like I'm going to say, I'm going to do this whole program, but I'm going to disagree with Dave Ramsey on investing and tell people to invest
I see.
Be kind of like him.
Yeah. I thought you were saying they don't want you to be like Dave Ramsey.
Oh, no. Like
the contrary is they want you to be exactly like
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey. Yeah.
So you dress up like him and everything?
That would be hilarious.
we have the same personality.
Oh, yeah, y'all do.
Yeah.
Y'all call a lot of people stupid.
They are stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, we speak the truth?
I can see you guys having a conversation where you're each calling each other stupid for like an hour, and then you're like, yeah, but I really like what you had to say there.
It's funny. I think conversation with someone like him wouldn't be calling we would say that's stupid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure. Like, I think that he would, I don't know. What I appreciate about him, and you said this, is he is working hard to work with people who are in trouble, not typically our situations, but that's why he's so drastic with some of his approaches, is because he's like, you can't control yourself here, so look, you're done with credit cards.
And so it's like I saw a clip the other day. I'm just gonna I need to figure out a way to get it on my algorithm because it's pissing me off. But like,
quit watching those clips.
That's fair. I can't. That's my kryptonite. Anyways, some lady called in and said, she goes, they had some credit card debt. They had some bad debt. And she's like, we have an account with $60,000 worth of crypto. And she said, I'm like, why did you call? She said, we're trying to figure out if we should hold our crypto for the upcoming projected bull market or should we sell it to pay off our debt? You're asking Dave Ramsey.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
he's going to say sell it.
You know what I would have told him? In their situation, sell it.
Yeah.
Like, sell it to pay off your debt. That's what I'm pro crypto, and I would have said sell it in that moment. But like, then that's used as an example of like why you should never get into crypto, period.
Yeah.
And it's pissing me off.
Mm-hmm.
It's pissing me off. He did an interview with President Trump. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Mm-hmm.
So he has some kind of respect for this administration, right? Who do they have? Who does this administration hire? New head of the SEC, pro crypto. They hire a crypto czar. They have a crypto that's pissing me off. What's pissing me off is there's going to be. His program's phenomenal. He actually says this. He says this program will make you a millionaire, but it won't make you a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
So I think he's doing something really, really good. I love the program.
Yep.
I love the steps. I love everything about like his heart behind it. It's when he gets to that point where he's like, there is only one way to do investing. I'm like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like if you and I were arguing about crypto or stocks.
Yeah.
Like, if one of us is like, there's only one way, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going to do it because it's a good program.
Yeah. Well, if you're local and want to talk about finances with Micah, go to Financial Peace University.
We'll put his number in the show notes.
There you go. Yeah. I think we're just going to change everything to just Micah's number.
I'm not going to do this. But there's part of me that's like, all right, I'm going to spend the next 3 years like getting a whole bunch of certifications in finance and do something that is like in the similar vein, but not the same, to be like, screw you for your stupid perspectives. I'm gonna take over here.
Yeah. If you're tired of lame Ramsey.
And just come out of nowhere too.
Yeah. But to your point, like he does have a lot. There's a lot that's beneficial from what he does.
No question. If someone actually does does the steps, like goes through the program, you're gonna be in a better spot financially than you were before.
It's just
it's not just
hard line on
certain
crypto.
things. Yeah. Well, invest. I think there's some investing things apart from crypto. I would disagree with him on anyways. So, but like, I don't think he's just helping people in trouble.
Yeah.
Like if you follow the steps, like you're gonna be in a really good financial place, and they all make sense in how they go. Again, my only caveat: he does a whole session on how he says to invest. And it's not a bad way to invest, so I don't hate the way that he goes through it in the program. It's when you see clips from his radio show, when he's like, there is no, like only do it this way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a knee-jerk reaction to all the failures and the people who have made shipwreck of their lives.
Yeah. I understand him being at that place. I just think it's stupid.
Yep.
Yeah. We're not talking about the stupidity of Dave Ramsey today. Ryan.
Who we actually like.
Who we like.
We do like.
We do like. What are we talking about, though?
Pierce, today we're going to talk about fear and the idea that we as Christians can be free from fear. So whether it's cultural fear, whether it's circumstances, whether it's fear, we kind of talked about our wives, our kids, like what if something happens, or even the fear that we have before God, like 1 John 4 that says we are, what does he say? Perfect love cast out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. And so we want to talk about the freedom from fear that we have.
But Ryan, what if I'm kayaking and I get swallowed by a whale?
Well, actually, Pierce, that would be pretty scary.
I trumped it.
I found the one situation.
As Micah said last week, there'd be a lot of brown water. Which I just want to say probably means you're unhealthy. Instead of just like a brown torpedo.
That's fair.
The whole digestive tract went to fear.
It's just like,
it's really a question of the previous evening.
Right, what
like,
you had.
Was there ice cream? Was there cheese?
Right.
Yeah, that would have.
Yeah. Oh man. It's the joke about the guy swimming and the shark comes up on him and he says, Lord God, please let the shark be a Christian shark. And the shark, right before it chomps down on him, stops and he says, God, thank you for this food I'm about to receive.
That's funny.
But yeah, like, I mean, I think we have talked a lot over the years about kind of just instinctive reactions. I think if a whale bumps your kayak and you're in that whale's mouth for, it was like 30 to 40 seconds or something that he was in there before the whale spit him back up. Like, I think, first of all, I don't know if you'd even have enough time at that point to be scared. You'd be so confused about what was going on. But I think that would probably change your kayaking plans for tomorrow.
Or ever.
Yeah. You'd be like, no.
You'd be okay kayaking on a river that's like a foot deep.
You know what would happen is the guy would give up kayaking and then he'd go to mountain biking. And in California, mountain bikers get attacked frequently, not infrequently at least, by mountain lions. And he'd be like, well, screw that.
I'd take the whale over a mountain lion, honestly.
Gosh, yes. Yeah. Because the mountain lion views you as a food source. Yeah. And the whale was just an accident.
Yeah.
So
I have a tool on my bike that is specifically for that situation. It's a tool, but like I will hold it in my hand, in my palm, and there'll be a tool poking up from my fist, and I'll use my bike as a shield. That's my plan. I'll lose, but I got to last long enough for someone else to come help.
We used to watch with the family a show called Something Bit Me. And there was a guy that was attacked by a mountain lion, and he wrestled it and like was trying to choke it out, like while he was being attacked, and stuff, and finally was able to provide enough resistance that the mountain lion left. But like still, like they tumbled down a hillside, like and stuff, and the rest of your life you'd be like, I jujitsu'd a mountain lion.
I mean, that'd be pretty dope.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in that moment, though,
I'm not really
on top of it. Like, there's like your point is there's an instinctive reaction that is probably different than what we're talking about.
Yeah, and so I think that those things do kind of happen instinctively. I think I think, for example, as much as I've handled snakes and caught snakes and different things, I've never and have no intention of handling a live rattlesnake. But if I were to come up on a snake and reach down for it and realize it was a rattlesnake, I'd jump. My heart rate would spike for sure, you know, and it'd freak me out for a little bit. And I'd probably dream about it that night, you know, and so I do think we have these reactions. Now, here's the point though. Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, that dude was just like plucking snakes out of trees, even venomous ones. He had no fear. Why? Because he knew everything that he could expect from it. He knew how to handle it. He knew he had a medical team nearby if that was necessary. But like he had confidence in handling it. And there were a few times he was bitten, and there were a lot of times he was bitten by non-venomous snakes, which that's a different thing as well. I remember being about 15, 16 years old and at my grandmother's lake house and saw a checkered garter snake swimming in the water next to the dock. And they're super easy to identify. It has a checkerboard all the way down its back. It's super easy. You know, oh, that's a checkered garter. It looks exactly like it. And I just reached into the water and pulled it out. It's only like 2 feet long. It immediately turns around and starts biting me, but it can't do anything. And I still dropped it. And I know it can't do anything to me, but my instinct was still fear. And then once I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I reached back down and caught him again. And so I do think, yeah, you're shaking your head. No,
I
thanks.
just see cottonmouths way too much. Like if there's a snake in the water, we're going to war.
Well, and the only reason I grabbed it is because it was 100%. I knew what it was, 100%. And there were tons of water moccasins around her property. And if I had even a doubt, like a 5% doubt, I'm not picking up that snake.
I'm incredibly comfortable with saying I can identify a cottonmouth.
Yes. Yeah.
The other ones I might have question marks, but I know when it's a water moccasin.
Oh, dude, they're mean and they're aggressive. But here's my point. I had an initial reaction of fear.
I've killed a few of them.
and then I immediately overcame that reaction because I was able to think about what was true about this snake. Steve Irwin doesn't ever freak out about any snakes because he knows what he's doing. And as we come to the place where we're like, I trust that God, we talked about this last week, as I trust that God is everything, as I trust that his kingdom is the eternal kingdom, as I trust that righteousness is found in him, as I trust that my life is in his hands, as he says in the book of Daniel, my breath is in his hands. Like, then what do I have to fear, right? What can man do to me? Jesus says this, is like, don't fear man that can destroy the body. It's like, and he's talking to people who are not people of faith at this point. He goes, but don't fear man that can only destroy the body. Fear God, who after destroying the body can condemn the soul to hell. And so we as believers have no need to be fearful of God. But if I don't need to fear man, and now because I'm in Christ, I don't need to fear God, then really what should I fear? And when you think about, I am continually amazed as I reflect on the martyrdom of Christians from the beginning of Stephen in Acts 7, all the way now into the 21st century. The article you sent us a couple of weeks ago of 70 Christians who were had their hands tied behind their back and then had their heads decapitated, were macheted to death. And I shared that with my boys too, because I was like, look, this is happening right now in our world right now. And these people are not renouncing Christ. Right. They're not turning away from who Jesus is. And the only way to do that is to value Christ more than you value your life. To, like, you don't make that choice if you live in fear. You couldn't. Right. If you live in fear, your life in that moment becomes more valuable to you than Christ does. Right. And so to be a person who goes, look, whatever's happening in our country, whatever's happening with the presidency, whether it's a coup or not a coup, or whether the country's so divided we're going to have a civil war or not have a civil war, or Europe is now wanting to distance itself from the U.S., or whatever the headline is, I can let all of that into my head and let it wreck me and be fearful about it. Or I can say, I serve a God who is still above all this and is still in control. And whatever happens tomorrow, my faith is still in Christ. Yeah. And as we better understand who Christ is, we become the Steve Irwins of the Christian world. We're just like, man, I'm just not fearful of anything. Like what, I mean, what can harm me? A stingray. Other than that, what can...
I was about to say, there's like the one, yeah.
Dude, like, Steve Irwin, though, like, and his son's doing all that now. I don't know if you've seen any of those videos and stuff now, but it's so cool. Like, his son has picked up where his dad left off, and it's a kind of a neat legacy in that world.
I think he just Got the hand-me-down clothes too.
Yeah. But it's just like, I mean, anyway, we don't have anything. I think the three of us are convinced that we don't have anything to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether we always live that way or not, I don't know. We could rewind to Hayes being born and being in the hospital and the doctor's telling you he's got a hole in his heart. We don't know what's going to happen. And I imagine there's a little bit of fear. And as you reset and as you fall on the floor in the hospital and you pray, and as we talked and we prayed, like you were like, man, God, this is your kid. My kid is your kid. Yeah. And so I don't know what I do. I don't know that we can avoid the initial reaction all the time.
I think the confusing part is that people lump that together.
Yeah.
I think when the scripture speaks of fear, I'm trying to think of some specific places, like even the Psalms, the Lord is my rock and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?
Of
right?
whom shall I be afraid?
Right. So there's like this, I know that's speaking of persons, right? But I think it's a correct perspective of like, there really is nothing to, I think it's the way you said it earlier is just fantastic. Is
good.
God is the one to be feared. Like nothing's more fearful than God.
Right.
So,
and as believers,
we don't have to worry about that.
We don't have to
right?
be fearful
so like,
of God.
If God's the scariest thing and he's on our side, then we're good. Right. So that perspective, I think, is the better perspective than like trying to avoid the fear. I think, because as an example with Hayes, I don't think the feeling of like anxiety for what's going to happen, of like the process of we're about to have to go through medically, the anxiety of like, is he going to live or is he going to die? The understanding of just watching some of our friends, the Stevensons of Reagan Stevenson, having had a heart transplant not too long before, like knowing the chaos and the pain and like knowing all that, like I don't think that's the same thing as fear.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think people confuse that. They conflate those two things together of like if they hear someone say you don't have to fear as a believer, they think that means you don't have the anxiety, you don't have the stress, you don't have the feeling of sorrow from loss or things like that. Those are different things. The fear is tell me if you guys think
I do think you can be free from anxiety, but I agree that it's a different conversation.
Okay, then use a different word, because the feeling of, I don't think I could be free of the feeling, whatever I'm trying to describe, of what was going on with Hayes.
Yeah.
Call it whatever you want. Like
you really don't think you could be?
No.
Yeah.
Like no. And why? Okay, let me put it in an example you gave last week. The dude who's trying to pull the mozzarella stick out of his daughter's throat.
Yeah.
He's not free of the feeling that caused him to cry later.
Yeah, true.
So I don't know what word it is. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think what people do is they think almost exactly what you're just exemplifying, is that the mindset is that if I'm free of fear, I'm free of that stuff. And I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I don't know where you'd ever get that from in the scripture.
Yeah.
If I'm pulling a mozzarella stick out of my kid's throat because they're about to die, I don't think I'm there going very calmly like, well, I know God's in control in this moment. I think in that moment, I'm like, get the thing out of the kid's throat.
So to your point, Jesus and Luke is sweating great drops of blood prior to going to the cross. There's something physically happening in his body over this fear, over this anxiety.
Like intensely.
But it's not preventing him or precluding him from putting his trust in his own Lord.
I would have a hard time saying he was fearing what was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do. That's what they would say, and I disagree with that. Yeah, they say he was so afraid.
Afraid? Text doesn't say that.
No, agreed. 100%.
So I think that's where my I think my struggle with how people tend to talk about this topic of fear is that they want to put it all together. And I might be using the wrong words to describe. Like I said, anxiety. I don't know what word to describe what I'm trying to say. Is like,
but
there's something that happens that's just part of life. Yeah. I think that's different than fear. I will say this. I do think that if you're someone who lives with fear or lives in fear, those things are like accelerated.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are some people who are afraid of everything.
Everything, right?
What if everything is going wrong? And the anxiety then if we're using that term, the anxiety then
probably is the wrong term
is
for
a
that.
product of fear rather than the knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how to distinguish those, to
Would-
be honest.
With this, based off what you guys are both saying, would that tie back to our episode over emotion? That like the emotion, there's nothing wrong with the emotion itself. What do we do with the emotion? And so, kind of what you're saying is, if you're someone who lives in fear, when those emotions happen, that's going to feed that and go into it. But if you're someone who is in Christ, you experience those emotions, you experience the panic, anxiety, stress, whatever it may be. But that's not defining you or feeding into fear or anything like that. You're in the moment. You're still.
Yeah. I think for me,
what do you do with the emotion?
Not to be contrary. I think for me, I'm thinking about it from the place of the depression that I walked through. Again, there's a massive difference between me walking along and nearly stepping on a rattlesnake and jumping back.
Yeah.
And having my heart rate going up and my adrenal glands start pumping adrenaline and I start sweating and feeling this tension and then like having to kind of come down off that.
I got it.
And there's a difference between that and me living in a place where everything felt dark and I was anxious and fearful all the time.
Yeah.
Because one is a reaction like just like that. And the other to me is a commentary about what I believe or don't believe
Yes,
about God.
exactly.
Yes, the
Yeah.
fear we're talking about here is a mindset.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a distrust of God.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not reactionary.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, that might be one of the defining factors is this reactionary or are you living in this?
Yeah.
Because if you're living in this, you probably misunderstand something about God.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reaction, like I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like to be Paul and be shipwrecked on the island of Malta and you're spending a day and a night in the open sea and you're making your way to the island or whatever. Like I've seen enough shark movies that would probably be in my head. I would be like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying though?
I do know what you're saying because
Yeah.
we were swimming in the ocean one time.
I know.
I was like,
I tell people that story with no hint of shame in my voice at all. When I say Micah and I swam under this and we went over to this place, we'd been snorkeling and we went to this place where it dropped off like 200 feet and it was really dark. We're like, this is really cool. And then all of a sudden we were both like, this is not cool. This is very scary. And let's get back to the safety of this
and
other
Ryan's
place.
a way faster swimmer than I am. Dang it.
And I tell that story without even a hint of embarrassment because it was just like, we realized how deep it was here and how dark blue it was over there. And we can't see all the way around us. And hey, let's get back over there where they had that little airplane sunk down with the angelfish swimming around that we could feed some food to and like whatever. Let's go back over to that part, the touristy part, you know? And yeah, it got into my head. You know, but I don't live in fear. Like I did live in anxiety. I did live in fear. I did live in depression. And for me, I think that somewhere in the conversation that has to be the dividing force.
Yeah.
Because for me, what was the part of the reason that I remained in the depression that I remained in for so long is because my identity was found in how I believed others perceived me or my parents perceived me or even how I perceived myself. But it was not based on how Christ perceived me or who I was in Jesus. And the more I got into the scripture and the more I surrounded myself at that point with Scott and Ryan, who were became friends of mine in that time period. And they were instrumental. And we spent a lot of time, the three of us together in the Word. We spent a lot of time together praying. Scott and I, for 2 years, our church had a prayer chapel. With a punch lock on it, and you'd sign up for it, and they had people praying in the prayer chapel 24 hours a day. And we had Thursday nights from 10 to midnight. And so we did that for 2 years.
Wow.
And it was
Cool.
It was good for us. Like, and as I started seeing God more clearly, the nightmares went away, the anxiety went away, the fear went away, the self-loathing went away, like all of those things dissipated. It doesn't mean that I'm not ever going to be scared again. But I think of stuff like Jesus sending the 12 out in Matthew 10, and he says, I'm going to send you out like sheep amongst wolves. And he says, don't even worry about what to say. The Spirit will give it to you at the time, and they're going to throw you in prison, and they're going to do these kinds of things. And he goes, don't be anxious about it. It's going to be okay. Now that's a specific thing. This is who is it? Huss? Who is it that you like to talk about? Who was burned, right? And he's worshiping God. There's no fear in that. there's no fear as presumably there's no fear as Peter is crucified or as Paul's beheaded. There's definitely no fear as Stephen is stoned to death. There's no, right. and it is because, and what's interesting about all these things that we're talking about now is these are people who were entrusted with the things of God. They didn't have a doubt in their mind. And so I wonder sometimes if our fear is when we're outside of the things of God. Not in sinful things necessarily, but like when our perspective is wrong, when we go, like we talked about last week, I'm prioritizing God over here. Now I'm doing this thing, and in this thing I have a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear. If we will bring God to the center of everything we're doing, I think it does diminish our fear. I think it gives us boldness. I think it gives us confidence. I think it would people all the time, and I don't disagree with it, but people will all the time say, there's a couple of guys I follow and I'm done with it, I think, but they'll say, we Christians need to quit trying to change the U.S. government. And he says, because the Christians in the first century world didn't try to overthrow Rome. Well, our government situation and their government situation was vastly different for one, vastly different. And we do have opportunities afforded to us that they didn't. And so, right. But also, however the vote goes and whatever power comes to be or whatever's usurped or whatever, like my trust isn't in that.
Right.
In the same way that my first century Christian brothers and sisters, their dependence wasn't upon Israel ousting Rome. Their dependence was upon Christ.
Right.
And so it's gotta be this thing that, like, I think that this piggybacks on what we talked about last week, that fear is diminished in light of the holding Christ as core and saying that, like, if he's everything, like what the worst that someone can do is put me to death, right? I mean, like, I guess you could argue that, well, they could torture your family first or they could whatever, but at the end of it all, they're going to put me to death and I will be in the presence of the Lord.
Right.
And this world is temporary anyways.
Right.
And it might mean that my last few weeks or my last hour is terrible, but my future is secure.
Yeah.
And I don't have to like it and I don't have to delight in it. And I'm not going to be cracking jokes during it, but like, it's been forever since I've read this. It was a book called the Hitler's Cross. And it was about Hitler's kind of attack on the church during World War II and how he kind of usurped what the churches were doing. Well, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was studying in America at that point, came back to Germany to be a force for Christ in Germany in that time. And ultimately, Bonhoeffer dies in a camp 3 weeks before the liberation of that camp. And I think he was hung by piano wire. I think he was hung that way. But one of the things that they did to him in the weeks leading up to his death is they'd bring him in to get him to renounce Christ, and they would strap his hands down and they would drive screws into his fingertips. And then back the screws out. And I physically can't fathom that.
No.
Like, I wouldn't want that to happen.
No.
You bent your fingernail back a little bit ago, and that hurts a whole lot.
Yeah. It's nothing like a screw.
Nothing like a screw going into your fingertip, like breaking that bone.
Yeah.
Right. And then over and over. And yet he held to Christ because whatever he's feeling, whatever the adrenaline's doing, whatever I don't know.
It's a value system. It's a perspective. And I think it really is you said it a second ago, that there's a sense of doubt that I think that is in the same vein of the fear. Like, if I doubt that God is the most powerful, scariest thing out there, then I'm going to fear because there's something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
But like, if I was thinking about this, like if someone breaks into my house and is trying to hurt my family because they want to, like, take some stuff from my house or just hurt my family, whatever I feel in that moment, I don't know, it's not anxiety, but whatever that emotion
you're
is,
going to have an adrenal reaction.
I'm going to have a reaction. I actually think that that's probably different than if someone shows up at my house and says, we're rounding up Christians and we're going to kill all of you. I think there'll still be some kind of, like, adrenaline, right? But I think it'll be different because I think the perspective is different, right? In one situation, someone is just trying to harm my family. Another situation is this is about Jesus.
And we know that that's part of it.
Right. And so I just have a feeling that like because my value system is exactly what you said, like Paul says, to live as Christ and to die as gain. Like I value the time I have in this life to glorify Jesus, and I look forward to the gain I have when I get to see him face to face. So it's like, in my mind, you can take nothing from me. That's why I'm not having to live with fears, because what is there to be afraid of? Right. So I don't know. I don't really know how to distinguish like the nuances, there you go, Colin, of like the feeling you have when things get awkward or rough or scary. You know, I don't think you could tell someone who got swallowed by a whale in their kayak, like, you should have been calm through the whole thing. You shouldn't fear. I think that's a different thought than like, if I got swallowed, all right, if I'm getting chased by a great white shark in my kayak, like you mentioned the last episode at the beginning, I'm going to be paddling for my life, right?
Yeah.
But if the shark gets me, I might be screaming because he's biting my leg. But I think there will be a sense in the moment of like, well, okay, here we go.
Well,
see ya.
We're done.
I bet there would be something in the back of my head that's like, I'm not sure if getting taken out by a semi or this is worse. Like, I'm not, you know, like, but I think there's a difference between, for lack of a better word, scared in the moment because it's a natural reaction of protection and defensiveness your body throws up, versus, you said it well, I think, living in a state of fear. Those are two separate things. Someone who lives in a state of fear is not someone who actually has a recognition of
who God is,
who God is.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I was single, and I was doing ministry and I wasn't making very much money at all, I didn't care. I started caring the moment I got married, and started caring a lot more the moment we started having kids. Like, because if I didn't have a whole lot of food, like I can't tell you the number of times in my life that I went to my bread and it was moldy and I was like, oh, well, and I ate it anyway, dude. You know, because it's what I had, you know? I can't tell you the number of times in my life I lived off of instant pancake mix that you just mix the water in and that's all I got, you know, and I'd make scrambled pancakes because my skillet, they weren't going to be pretty anyway. So I just dumped all the batter in there and scrambled them and ate a pancake blob, you know, and I didn't have syrup or butter. Like, I mean, there were a lot with my and it never bothered me. With my family, it bothered me. And I was like, I want to make sure that I can put food on the table. I want to make sure that we can do this. And
so you went to Home Depot?
Yeah. And it was something that I got anxious about, something that I got fearful about. And
that's a good point.
Now, here's the thing. Okay. The problem for me and you, we'd both admit to this, is that 20 years on, we were still feeling anxious and fearful.
Yes.
Even though we had both seen God provide for us over and over and over again. Now that's a problem.
Yes.
This is no longer a reaction to a new situation. This is me saying, God, I've seen you be faithful hundreds of times, but will you this time? And now it becomes testing the Lord, which is what Paul says is just as bad as idolatry or sexual immorality. And so that's the thing, is like, okay, this is a new circumstance for me. God, I don't know what to do. This is Jehoshaphat saying, all right, God, our eyes are on you, but we don't know what to do. This army's coming against us. But I promise you, after God destroyed that army, Jehoshaphat wasn't ever worried about the next army that showed up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Hezekiah taking the letter from the king of Assyria up and laying it before the Lord and going, do you see what they're saying? What are you going to do about it? And then God kills 185,000 soldiers and then Hezekiah goes, cool, we're good. Right? Like, so there is a sense in which we lay the letter before God. We lay the thing before God and we go, God, I don't know what to do. Like, this has me worried. There's an army outside the gates. I don't know what to do. My eyes are on you. But if you're still going 20 years in, I don't know what to do, you haven't learned who God is.
If the letter's the same.
The same situation. Like, at some point, you got to go, why are you walking in fear? Have you not seen God do this? Have you not seen God provide for you? And have you not seen God, whatever the thing is? But like, there's something different about it. And I don't know how to describe it, but
do you think the first one's out of fear?
Like
when Hezekiah brings a letter, or when Jehoshaphat prays the first time, we don't know what to do. I'm not sure that's out of fear.
I can't say that it is or isn't. What I can say is the first time that I didn't see any money coming in and I have a wife and a 6-month-old baby, that was fear for me. How am I going to take care of them?
That's why I think it's such a great point, because it's something that most of us probably deal with in a certain point in life.
Yep.
I think what's been difficult for us is recognizing that we did watch God provide over and over and over again, and yet we still
wouldn't believe it.
Doubted.
Yep.
And I think that's it.
Yeah.
We were doubting. I don't think we doubted that God was capable.
Nope.
Which is so stupid. Like,
I know.
We're freaking idiots.
It's testing the Lord. Are you going to do it this time?
Right. Like, why? It is really what it is. It was a comfortability lying in me.
Yep.
Like, God had always been faithful. Why would I assume he wouldn't be faithful?
Sure.
I read the scriptures and God was always faithful in the scriptures. Why would I doubt that he would be faithful now?
Sure.
But yet I'm doubting in this moment. Like,
yeah.
And I'm doubting over a little bit of money to the God who owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. Like there's nothing about this that makes sense, but yet it's something that everybody has probably dealt with at some point in life.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great example, because we could say like, well, I don't really fear death, or I don't really fear pain or suffering, but yet you fear like when things get a little tight financially.
I know. Yeah. When the dishwasher breaks and the car breaks down and you have all these extra expenses.
Did you ever fix that, by the way?
Dishwasher?
Uh-huh.
No.
We got to fix that. Remind me.
Michael Tricero, he stands in the kitchen usually for Bible study on Wednesday nights. And I think it's because he likes to be close to the snack, but he stands over there. And, he does, man. He stands right by whatever I made. Whatever thing I made, he's making it.
I'm with you, dude.
Yeah.
I'll be right there with you.
Dude, I made maple syrup cookies for the first time ever a couple of weeks ago. So good.
Yeah.
But
Michael and I would have knocked those things out the whole batch.
He saw a cookie sheet under the dishwasher and he goes, "Is it leaking?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "All right, I'll keep my eye out for one." So I told Michelle, I said, when the church is done, I'm going to remind Micah and remind Michael, hey, keep your eyes out for a dishwasher, because it's leaking on the floor and we have to, anyway. But so here's an example, right? So we don't have crazy debt. I would like to get my car paid off. It's the only real debt.
You're like really close to being out of debt.
Pretty close. Yeah. So we have money on the car that we owe. We just paid off Asher's braces. We owe $4,000 on Riker's braces, and then we're done. But we owe like 20 on the car. And my goal is to be
that's like a quarter of what a lot of people have on their credit card debt.
Yeah. So my goal is to be super aggressive and be done by the end of the year. And I did the math, and I really feel like we could be done by the end of September. Well, January was the biggest month I've ever had in art sales ever in January. It's just a little shy of the biggest month I've ever had. And so I sold $10,000 in art in January. That's $6,000 in our pocket, and I was like, cool, right? And we paid some stuff off. And I was like, I just need to keep that going. And February, I haven't sold anything, nothing. And, so February was a miss, right? And I found myself kind of getting back in my own head and going, oh, crud. But here's the thing. It's my plan to pay it off by September. It doesn't matter. And we have everything we need, and we've got food on the table, and like we're fine. We're fine. And yet I started overthinking it and allowing myself to get worried about it again and fearful again. And I think worry and fear are relatives if they're not, and
My
so
mom always said, why pray when you can worry?
Yeah. Mom always said. But yeah. And so, and I had to really correct that in me. And I was like, what in the world are you panicking over? What in the world are you feeling?
Nothing to panic over.
No, like we're fine, and we're not fine because I have some investments I could liquidate. Like, and that's something you and I talked about a lot. Like, I don't want my confidence to be in me.
What you've done or what you have.
Yeah. I want my confidence to be that God is faithful and he's done the same thing. And so I want to live, I want to be like freaking Polycarp, that when the proconsul says, don't you know that I can burn you with the fire? And Polycarp's answer is, yeah. He goes, you talk about a fire that's only going to burn me for an hour and know nothing of the hellfire that will burn you forever. Like I want to be that kind of guy that just when tragedy strikes and the reaction is had, The response to that reaction is, but I know who God is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the problem is how we respond to the stimuli will tell us what we believe about God.
Mm.
So the initial reaction, let's just say everybody's the same.
Mhm.
The next thing you do with that
Mhm.
will reveal what you really believe about
Where
who
your
God
confidence
is.
lies.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because a lack of confidence in God is the product of that is fear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he is the most powerful and scariest thing that exists.
Yeah.
And he's my dad. He's my
Yeah.
God. He's
And
my
he
king.
cares about
He
me.
cares about us. He gave me his spirit who lives inside of us now.
Yeah.
That, like, literally, what do I have to fear?
Yeah.
Mhm.
What do I have to fear?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the struggle is like that is confidence. There is nothing that you can have more confidence in than that.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you don't have that confidence, what it produces is fear.
Right. Yeah. It's just, I mean, it is Peter, sorry, not Peter, it's Paul in Iconium or Lystra being stoned and left for dead, dragged outside the city. The disciples come around him, pray for him, and he goes back into the city and he starts preaching. Like that's amazing, you know? Like it's just this idea of like, look, man, the worst you can do to me, is take my life. It's the worst you can do to me.
You know, you see stories sometimes, or I've read stories about like a parent who will like rescue their kid at the cost of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody's shocked by that. Right?
No.
Nobody's like, I cannot believe that he gave up his own life for his kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to us somehow that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't make sense to have the kind of confidence in God that we would like be willing to even face death for that. So that's what's weird to me is like somehow we're saying we put more value in a parent-kid relationship than we do in our relationship with God.
No. That's exactly what's being said. And it goes to misplaced priorities.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So we go, but the kid is this little innocent life or whatever, which I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Like the kid that can't help themselves, you help that kid.
Yeah.
But God is bigger than your kid.
Mhm.
And my life belongs to him. And I just think about this a lot. This is something that I used to teach a lot when I was traveling and preaching. But if God was pleased for his glory to crush his son, Isaiah 53,
Mhm.
if it pleased God for Stephen to be stoned to death, so that the result of that was that the gospel would finally break out of Jerusalem and be carried across the world. If it pleased God,
I mean, potentially literally just with one dude.
I know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because of his death.
Paul saw Stephen there.
Yeah.
And
Well,
look at the world now.
I know, but I'm even before that. So at the end of Acts 7, it says that such a persecution rose amongst the Jews, or the beginning of chapter 8. It says that they were scattered across the world.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's right.
So because of Stephen's death, Jesus had told them go into all the world. They hadn't. And because of Stephen's death and the persecution, the gospel got carried into the world.
Thought about that.
And if God can do that, okay.
Yeah.
Then if it requires me being crushed for God to be glorified,
Yeah.
Mhm.
if it requires, look, Daniel was rescued from the lion's den, and the whole known world at that point under the Persian Empire heard about the God of Daniel. Prior to that, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the fiery furnace, and God delivered them. And the whole Babylonian kingdom heard about the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But you don't always get rescued.
Mhm.
Right.
So whether I'm thrown to the lions like Daniel and rescued from it, or I'm thrown to the lions like the first century martyrs and not rescued from it, okay.
Yeah.
Like, for the glory of my King,
Mhm.
for his name to be made known. And I have to be so convinced of that. Now, here's what I love. Because as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, I don't feel in my heart that I would do that. I don't feel that I would.
Really?
Bear with me. I feel in my heart like I'd be a little cowardly in the moment. But I am convinced of what Jesus says to the 12. In that moment, the Spirit will give you what you need to say. Give you.
Mhm.
So I am also convinced that in that moment, the Spirit will equip me for the thing at hand.
Sure. And maybe what you're acknowledging is a recognition of what you're calling the immediate reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's probably somewhat based on experiences,
thoughts.
personality.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, this is not a great example, but like, I'm not sure everybody could have been William Wallace.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No,
He had to be.
couldn't have been.
He had to have some pretty big stones, and he's like, I don't do whatever. He's like, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
some of that. So that's a good point, because I don't think we should compare, or we shouldn't bring into the conversation like how well people do in tough situations based on their personality or
Can't.
experiences, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
If I got swallowed by a whale kayaking, and then I go on a kayak trip with my buddies, they're gonna make fun of me the whole time because I'm gonna be like looking over my kayak, right? So
I was going to say next day on Facebook Marketplace, kayak for sale.
Yeah.
Only swallowed once by a whale.
but all my buddies I'm kayaking with are gonna
Yeah.
be like, dude, you're such a pansy. Let's just
Yeah.
go, right? But so it's my experience that
Yeah.
does dictate
Yeah.
the immediate reaction to your point. But no,
Yeah.
I think that's a great thought. Is like your confidence isn't even in how well you think you'll do.
Nope. My confidence is that God has supplied the Spirit for me to equip me for that moment.
Mhm.
But if I'm going to think that about my martyrdom, don't I also have to think that about
My
the
daily
time that
life.
the grocery money is low?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that's where people are so. It's the kind of macho man mindset that's like, I could beat a grizzly bear. I know I could. I could make. No, you freaking couldn't beat a grizzly bear. Like with your bare hands. That's
Oh,
not.
I was
happening.
gonna, before you said bare hands, I was in like, dude, I got a lot of stuff.
Yeah. You're not winning against the 900-pound grizzly. It's just not going to happen, right?
Well,
Like,
you got to preface with the bare. You should start with the bare hands,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking of a lot of ways I could take down a 900-pound grizzly.
mono a paw, you know?
There you go. There you
yeah.
go.
It's not happening, right? 9-inch claws, like it's
Yeah.
just not happening, right? And a female grizzly can be like 6 to 7 feet. A male grizzly can be like 9 to 10, like on his hind legs. Like, can you even imagine?
I gotta say, if that happens,
You're up just past this belly button. And you're like,
Let's do it. Yeah.
for real, if that happens, I'm finding the quickest way to make a David slingshot,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna do my best. I'm like, well, if he did it, I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah.
yeah, I know I can't outrun him.
Joking, obviously.
I know I can't, like, so I'm looking for the nearest cliff to jump off of because
Yes.
I'm like, that gives me a better chance. But you have people all the time who are like, they say, if I was going to be martyred for Christ, man, I'd be so brave. Maybe so. Will you be free from fear when the little thing happens?
I think I think the direction you're going is a great point, because it's even a sobering thought for me, because I think I'd be Polycarp.
Yeah.
By
Mhm.
nature. I'd be
I
like,
think
well,
you would.
screw you. Like,
Mhm.
but I can't rely on my self-confidence as a person and my like brash personality to be the thing that pushes me through, because it's exactly like you said. It's the Spirit
Yeah.
is the one that gives me that confidence.
Yeah.
I'm actually confident that if I was in prison and beaten like the apostles and sent out saying, stop talking about Jesus, I will probably leave rejoicing that I was counted worthy to suffer
Yeah.
for the name. Not because, I mean, maybe the rejoicing wouldn't be because of my my confident personality. The rejoicing would be because the Spirit is the one that empowers me to do that, right?
Yeah.
But in the same way you're saying, I don't know how I would handle. I think
Yeah.
I might be a little scared in the moment.
Right now, sitting here with you guys, I'm
Right.
saying I would not do well in that moment.
In the same way,
but I believe the Holy Spirit would equip me.
yes,
to.
in the same way, I can't say I would do well
Mhm.
and not rely on the Spirit.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Because it can't be about your personality.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it
I
can't be
think-
about my personality.
And what's great about what you're saying is I think you can maybe tell where you would be by how you handle the daily stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Not handle, but like how you approach
Yeah.
the daily
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Because it's the small things versus the big things. And like the people who are going to lose their crap over the bump in the road
Mhm.
are probably not going to be able to stand up to your life's on the line.
Yeah.
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 Like because it's self-reliance.
Mhm.
And the goal of this, like if you want to be free from fear, if you want to be free from worry, there can't be an ounce of self-reliance in it. There can't be.
Right.
God is bigger than everything else. It has to all but depend on him. You
Yeah.
have to believe that he is better. You have to believe that he is superior.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have to believe like it. I have to believe, and this breaks my heart because we have friends who are in sad situations that we would never want for them. But like, I have to believe that God is better than my wife and that God is better than my kids. And that
Yeah.
if all of that is stripped from me tomorrow,
Mhm.
like God is still superior.
Yeah.
And I can't walk through this world fearful that they might be stripped from me,
Mm-hmm.
because that betrays the fact that I don't actually believe God is superior.
Yeah.
Like I can't be fearful. Like I remember I had a friend who, when they had their first baby, and this is before I was married or had kids, but when they had their first baby, they were saying that their baby was like a really heavy sleeper, which I didn't know until later is pretty rare, but their baby was a heavy sleeper. And they would just be convinced that their baby had suffocated. And they would find themselves going in and checking every, few minutes. Are they still breathing? Are they still breathing? And they said it dawned on me that here I am thinking that the reason my baby is still alive is because I'm checking every 15 minutes. And I had to get to the point where I was like,
Wow.
God is the one who gave us this child.
Wow.
And God is the one who gives life and can take life away. And I have to trust the Lord. Because they said, we want more kids than one. How am I ever going to survive?
You'll never sleep.
if I'm just terrified all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's
There's a difference, I think, between the in that situation between fear and like concern or responsibility.
yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Well, when Asher was 6 months old, this was the next story I was going to share. When he was 6 months old, first kid, he's running 103 fever over Christmas break. And our doctor was out of town. We loved our doctor, Dr. Padarak, man. He was a great doctor. And he was out of town. And so we called the on-call doctor, and they're like, any other symptoms beside the fever? And I was like, well, he's coughing up some like bile every now and then. They're like, okay, I think it's fine. Let it run its course. And I was like, heck no, man. And so the next night I slept in Asher's room on his floor because he was waking up every 15 minutes. And so I'd hold him and I'd rock him back to sleep and he'd wake up. And then the next day I was like, forget this. And so I took him to a clinic, and Dr. Campbell, Jack Campbell, he and his wife have started coming to our church recently. He was a former ER doc who was working here at this clinic. And what I loved is I hand him my son, my 6-month-old son, and he goes, well, you know what? It's probably this, it's probably that, but let's just do some x-rays, make sure he doesn't have any pneumonia, make sure he doesn't have anything going on there. And he runs a few tests and stuff. And he says, you know what? I think we just want to manage his fever, and we want to make sure he's getting fluids. And so here's what I want you to do. And he was so calm and so sure. We went home calm and sure, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
We are coming to God who is higher than us and better than us and knows better than us. And we're going, here you go. Here's my stuff.
That
You're the expert and I'm not.
I think that's maybe why I asked the question about fear earlier. Again, we can't know whether Hezekiah
I don't know.
or Jehoshaphat did, but I do think the gesture would make me think that it's not. When to your example, when I'm offering up my stuff before God, I think that's acknowledging that he's the one I have to ask.
Yeah.
I think
you're bigger than this.
I have a hard time saying I would do that out of fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would do that because I recognize that he is God, right?
Yeah.
So maybe like a practical application of this thought is, if you want to be someone who's rid of fear in your life, let that be the practical, is like when you feel the tension, let God be the first place you go.
Yeah. Learn to hand those things over to God.
Yeah. Because I think in that moment, what you're actually practicing is a recognition and perspective that he's the one who is greater. He's the one who is more powerful. He's the one who is scarier. He is the one who is richer. Like you can go on and on and on. Like he is all those things. And just the practice of saying, God, here. And we've even said that about our financial stuff in the past. Like, why was it that our first response when things got tough wasn't to offer it up to God?
I'll work on it.
Why was it Home Depot? Why was it like, like it's kind of a joke, but it is actually reality. Like why was our first response not that? Because I think someone who actually recognizes that God is the place to go is not living in fear.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that is, and I honestly think it's the spirit, but I also think it's just practice, making the practice of going, God, here you go.
Yeah.
And if we would learn to do that in the little tiny things that don't feel like they're that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Man, God, I'm a little anxious today, or I'm a little, I don't know, I feel fearful today, or I feel worried today. God, here you go. I want to give it to you. I think if we would begin to train ourselves to do that now and experience the faithfulness of God in those things, then when the things that come that will steal all of our breath away and cause us to weep into our pillows at night, we will still be able to go, God, here you go. Because the chances, look, the chances that any of us make it through life without having inconveniences and worries is zero.
Yeah.
The chances that any of us make it through life without having our breath stolen from us and weeping into our pillows every night is still really, really low.
Mhm.
Like all of us are probably going to face something like that at some point, and we want to be sure that that thing doesn't rule us with worry
Yes.
and fear.
Yes.
That we have learned that God is trustworthy.
Yes.
And I think that there's a little bit of training that needs to happen in that
Yeah.
we practice that. We
Yeah.
practice trusting God. And so that when, like, I have found myself more and more as Asher gets older, he's almost 16, I have found myself more and more often worried that I have not done well to raise him in the things of God. You know? And I scour my brain. I'm like, what should I have done? How did I fail? You know? And I go, no, I keep pointing my son to Jesus. Like this is what I've done since he was born. This is what I'm going to continue to do. But seeing all the people who shipwreck their lives and not wanting that for my son and going, God, guard him. Like, and I'm having to remind myself now, no, my son belongs to the Lord, not to me. Belongs to the Lord. And so I hand my son over to the Lord and say, God, he's yours. And so guard him and grow him up in you and help him to love you. But like, I can't, if I live out of fear, even in that, like it's going to change. I'm going to try to take control. I'm going to try to do it. And then ultimately I'm just going to make a mess of it. And then there'll be more stuff to be fearful about.
Right.
Because I blew up my own world.
Right. I think there's like things you do in that situation as a parent that are practical, like with the goal of pointing my kids towards Jesus. Here's some things I'm, to use your word, practicing or doing. Maybe even in terms of like, he's about to start driving. Like you've talked about that. Like he doesn't have to have a car, right? But like you're going to figure it out. Like it's fine for him to have a car. So you're moving that direction. So that's practical. But when you've talked about him getting a car, it's probably not the best idea with the drive he has to make every day for him to drive a 1994 Jeep Wrangler soft top. Like it's just not you might do it, but like it's not very practical. Two, it's definitely not safe. There's a reason I don't let Aiden drive the Jeep out to the church, right? That's not me living in fear. That's me going, that's stupid. Like why would I? He's always like, Dad, can I drive at the church? No. Well, plus I don't want to pay for parts when it breaks. Like that's the other thing too. But like, so there's a difference between I think fear and then like recognizing wisdom's a good way to say it.
Absolutely.
But I think it's the confidence line in the Lord that allows us to act within wisdom in the rest of the life without the trepidation of like, what if I do it wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
Price is wrong.
I feel like we left a lot of meat on the bone on this one, but I feel like it was still a good conversation.
Yeah.
It was definitely one we haven't talked about very much.
Yeah. So we can look back on it, and if there's a certain aspects, we didn't talk much about fear before God being.
We don't have any fear before God. There we go.
We just
First
did.
John
So
4.
all the meat's now gone.
Yeah. Okay, good.
No, I think about too what I had said last episode of just like, as you guys were talking of it seems like there's just a lot of Christians who like, it's not real for them. Like it's just sure, I trust God on Sundays. Sure. When things get really hard, then I'll trust God, but I got everything else. I'm good to go. Like, doesn't feel like there's a real relationship with the Lord, a real life change with the Lord, and a real acknowledgement of how powerful he is. The example you used earlier, Ryan, about, or Micah, about the people understand the self-sacrifice of a parent for a child. And that's how love works. And if we were to expand upon like a cultural understanding of parents, we would not say that we ever want our children to live in fear. We want them to know that we're there to take care of them. We're there for them. We're loyal to them. We're on their side. Like there's layers of that emotionally, like provisionally, just like where we as parents are going to give up, not just die for them, but there's things that we're going to give up for the sake of the betterment of their life. And we can understand that type of relationship, and then for some reason we forget that type of relationship when we think about God and how we are children of God and how he sent Christ to save us and how we are secure in him, and how that type of love is way more confidence than we could ever experience here on earth now, that we have that confidence in that relationship in him. But what people want to do is kind of what you said Micah, is just they want to define all of these things based off of experiences. But yeah, sure, you may die, but you know what Christ says? You know what God says? You're secure in him. And sure, you may die, but you live with him forever. Mm-hmm. There's a quote from a song that came out 20 years ago that says, I forget how he says it, but he's like, you want me to promise your tomorrow, but I can't promise you tomorrow. All I can promise is that whatever tomorrow brings, it will never take you past my palm. You will always be mine. You will always be in Christ. So he's hiding the sacrifice of the cross there, but nothing can undo the cross. Nothing can undo who you are in me. And while we might be fearful of what we don't know would happen, we're always secure in Christ. And so let that truth trump whatever there might be in the midst of that.
Yeah.
Just let it be real. Like I feel like the past 3 episodes, like that's kind of what's going through in my mind, is that there's so much that that Christian culture wants to talk about doing that doesn't just put in practice because they don't come to face with the living God. They want to make it about priorities. They want to make it about whatever on paper, whatever I say is good, or whatever I can earn, whatever I can do, instead of just setting all that aside and saying like, this is who God is. This is what he has done through Jesus. And this is who I am now in him. And let's rest in that. And now
that's confidence.
That's confidence, right? The most solid confidence we can ever have is who we are in Christ and what he's done.
What's funny is flip it with the parent and kid. Like, I bet when you pick Riley up from school, she's not freaking out about the drive home.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Because she knows her daddy's got her, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think you can flip it that way too. Like, it's her recognition of you that gives her the confidence of, she doesn't understand how the car works, probably. Yeah, exactly. You're not a mechanic. I can't imagine you're teaching your daughter about, like, she probably doesn't understand the dangers of the road.
Mm-hmm. But she knows dad will get him there. Yeah. Yep. So I like this. I like these types of discussions. The freedom discussions I really love. Like the past year, or really the past few years, like God's been doing a work in all of us in regards to freedom in him. And I think I told you, Ryan, last week, of just like, I feel like through so many conversations in ministry, through me, so many just thoughts that I'm having, like going through the word and podcasts and books and stuff, just like God is highlighting all of these aspects of freedom that we have. Ultimately, it's freedom in Christ, but we're free from fear. We're free from doubt. We're free from self-condemnation. We're free from self-loathing. We're free from ambiguity. Like we have purpose now. Like there's so many aspects of that freedom that we can keep talking about it over and over. It's not simple, the freedom in Christ, but it is simple that we do have freedom in Christ. There you go.
There you go.
Did you have a simpler view for us, Mike? I bet you said something a second ago that I just started to talk over.
Yeah, be confident in God.
Yeah. Yes. You know who I'm also confident in? Steven, Vanilla Man, Cheeto Man, Vanilla. Was it Vanilla Man and Cheeto Man?
Hot Cheeto.
Hot Cheeto and Vanilla Man. I was about to say Cheeto Man and Vanilla Boy.
I mean, Ryan should draw that.
I do want to.
Well, that's Steven. And we love him.
Is he both characters in the cartoon?
Yeah. So
it's his alter ego.
So you need to find like kid pictures of Steven, and that's Vanilla Boy.
Yeah. There you go.
And Hot Cheeto is who he is now.
Just use Brett. Current Steven, and use Brett.
There you go.
It's Vanilla Boy.
That's perfect. We love Steven. We love being able to come out here to the Garden Audio and being able to record without worry of it sounding bad, with an understanding of knowing that the quality is going to be taken care of, and that Steven has a passion for this type of stuff. And so it's cool to see all that work out with him. Throw a comment down there below how much you like Steven. We want to ask you guys for a favor as well. If you're on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, head over to YouTube, search for simplerpod, and subscribe to our channel. That's going to help us get to a point where we can start to make money on YouTube, not because we just super duper want to be rich, but we want to see the podcast become self-sustaining financially and see money be able to pour it into the podcast and just let it work out itself. So one of the ways that we can easily gain money or gain income through the podcast is just through AdSense on YouTube. And so we've hit all the other requirements except for subscriber count. So go help us get that subscriber count up. Check out our show notes, check out our social medias, all the different links down below. There's ways that you can be involved in the Simpler community here. There's ways you can see the different ministries at work that we all talk about here on the podcast. And so we're so thankful for you guys. Reach out with questions, comments, how the reality of who God is and how he shaped you has shaped your perspective on fear, or how this conversation may have been challenging to you, whatever that is. Reach out to us. We love to hear from you guys. This is a community, and we're so thankful to be able to grow and learn beside you. And hey, as always, keep Christ as core. What could be simpler than that? We'll catch y'all next week. Bye.